Good morning. Discuss about learning, which have the basic English and the panacea before Shleimet, Yechiel Nasim ben Sarah. We're going to start off Chavav. It's a Mishnah. Yeah, I guess the only thing you need to know for this Mishnah is the very last line of the previous Mishnah. It says, that you're allowed to have a temporary meal outside the sukkah. It means a snack. You're allowed to eat a snack outside the sukkah. That was on Daf Yomi. Now we're on Daf Yomi, and it says, Maisa. The Mishnah continues. Maisa ve'vi'u le'la Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. There was a story. They brought to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the great Tana at the time of the Churban. And he was the one in the Mishnayos. He has the 5 students that he praises and everything. So they brought him food. They brought him to taste the stew. And Ram Gamliel, who happened to be at the same time as well, they brought him 2 dates and a bucket of water. And both of them said, Helam l'sukkah. I don't want to eat them outside the sukkah. The Gemara is going to ask right away. It's a little strange because the Mishnah just said that you're allowed to have a snack outside the sukkah. And the snack would be anything that's not the full amount of bread. So, and these are not bread anyway. So why did they need to eat it in the sukkah? Do Lubavitch. We'll see that. When they gave it to Reb Tzadok was the one that fasted for 40 years. So that the basic English shouldn't be destroyed. So he was also around at the same time. He ate less than an egg size, not l'bamapa. He ate it in a cloth, like a napkin. He ate it outside the sukkah and he didn't say an after bracha. Yeah, Reb Tzadok has a bunch of details here. Everyone else was ate it in the sukkah, okay. Reb Tzadok is telling me, first of all, he used a cloth. It sounds like he didn't wash his hands. He didn't wash his hands, but he used the cloth instead. He ate it out of the sukkah, which is interesting. But that fits better with the previous Mishnah that we had, that you're allowed to eat outside the sukkah if it's a snack. And then he didn't say an after bracha, which sounds like he doesn't hold that you have to say an after bracha. Because he's eating less than an egg, which is about 2 kazesim. So he doesn't say an after bracha because it's an interesting taste over here. That there is a machlekes if you have to say after bracha on a kazayas or not. The Taisa says that it seems that the halacha is that you do. He quotes Yerushalmi and introduces a concept of a beria. That a beria is like a shear. A beria means if it's a full fruit, like a grape, and you ate the whole thing. So that would require an after bracha as if it was a shear. Okay, now the Gemara challenges what the Mishnah just said. It said, Maisa lister. That means that you're contradicting the Mishnah before. You bring a story. The story is supposed to match the halacha. The halacha was that you don't need to eat a snack in the sukkah. We have a story that they ate it in the sukkah. So how does that match? The Gemara says, there's actually a phrase missing from the Mishnah. We have to add in one phrase. And what the phrase is supposed to say is, there's a concern that people should not become bali gaivach. They shouldn't show off that they're on levels that are higher than they're really holding. So here we have Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and Rabbi Gamliel, that the halacha is that they don't need to eat in the sukkah. And they're eating anyway in the sukkah. So, well, maybe there's yur over there, like Rabbi Tam Tefillin or something. Years ago, there was an issue of yura. You shouldn't put it on and make it look like you're a Shemayim, like you're holier than everyone. So maybe there's an issue over here that makes it look like you're holier than everyone. And so it says no, there's no problem with that. We're learning a very interesting halacha here, that when it comes to eating in the sukkah, there's no problem with making it look like you're holier than everyone. When you're allowed to go and eating in the sukkah, you see, let's be mishum yura, there's no concern. My tsunami, they deal with even though they were exempt. Helam the sukkah. Yeah. Yeah. What about all the issues of if you're anyone that's exempt from something and he does it anyway, is called the hedyot, which in English is translated as idiot. Well, there's other issues here. Probably the shot is that if you're the type of person that doesn't eat snacks out of your house, so then you're obligated to eat snacks in the sukkah. Because it depends on the yura may be not in the sukkah, but it's on. In general, I don't eat out of my house. Nothing. I don't eat at the stam on the street or something. I always eat at home, even a snack. So if that's the case, then they wanted to be machmer in the sukkah as well. They're not going to eat a snack outside the sukkah because the sukkah is like the house. Maybe that's the shot. So yeah, what I'm saying is that the yura may start earlier than right now on sukkahs, but they never did. They never eat out of there. Okay, there's three halachas that Reb Tzadok is giving us. He used the claw. Why do you use a claw? Rashi says there's no din to wash his hands. He used the cloth just to be clean. You want to eat with his fingers. Yeah. So they say, well, how come the women don't wash my makrena? Only the men. Because the women don't eat with their fingers. But I think that's a joke. Here he didn't want to eat with his fingers, so he used the cloth. That's what Rashi says. Taisha says what? Why do you have to say that? We're talking about he was Eichel Tarek, he was Eichel Truma. Reb Tzadok was a kohen, and the rule is that even less than a shear, you need to wash your hands for Truma itself. So he was going to use a cloth instead of washing his hands. Okay, he ate it outside the sukkah, and he also didn't say an afterbracha. He ate it outside the sukkah. We know why, because it's a snack. It's less than their mouth. And he didn't say an afterbracha. We know why, because he held that you only have to say an afterbracha when it comes to kadei sevia, which is the full satisfaction, which would mean the size of an egg. He ate a little bit less than an egg. But if it would have been a full egg, he would have to go to the sukkah. This takes us back. Rabbi Yosef said, we asked, what's considered a snack? Rabbi Yosef said yesterday in yesterday's Gemara, so 2 or 3 eggs. Why says that's a whole meal, that's not a snack. But he said maybe Rabbi Yosef, it's harder for him to get full because he was blind. So he had to eat more. But Abaye said that 1 egg. His term was the amount the person would eat before he comes to the shia. Whatever the case is, once it's an egg, then one egg, according to Abaye, according to Rabbi Yosef, doesn't change the din in Hilchos Sukkah. 1 egg is still considered a snack. Less than an egg and an egg is the same. It's only more than an egg, according to Abaye, and according to Rabbi Yosef, more 2 or 3 eggs. So we're asking, Reb Tzadok ate it outside the sukkah because it was less than an egg. But if it would be the size of an egg, you would have to eat it in the sukkah. It's a kasha on Abaye. Abaye says even the size of an egg is outside the sukkah. The Gemara explains that Reb Tzadok had 3 halachas here. In those 3 halachas, see, when you have too many variables, so it gets difficult to know which one the halacha would switch when you add up, when you increase the share. Maybe the halacha only switches for netilas yadayim And halacha switches for saying a bracha achrona once it's an egg, but less than an egg. You don't need til shidam, you don't need a bracha achrona, you don't need the sukkah. When do you need the sukkah? It's not by an egg. That's even by more than an egg. Yeah, Daniel.
Isn't Rav Solik the one that fasted for 40 years? Like he would be fulfilled with like the juice of a fig. How is he eating all much and not being satisfied?
Yeah, it's a good question. How old was he? Maybe I had two options. Either it was before the fast or it was after the fast. Yeah. You have a comment?
I think he's saying things that are for people, not necessarily. He's paskening halacha for regular people.
I don't know if I could say that because it says Eichel Papas Mikbeya. No. It sounds like he actually ate it. Yeah. Okay. We have an interesting Mishnah which introduces us tomorrow's Gemara. The Mishnah gives us the unique opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer was the student of Rabbi Yomi Zakkai. Rabbi Yomi Zakkai said he was a Barsid Shenim Abetipa. Right? He was if he would be on the side of the scale and all of the others were on the other side, he would outweigh all of them, according to one version. Mishnah says, you need to have 14 sukkahs. 14 meals in the sukkah. You need to have 14 meals in the sukkah. Yeah, there's a problem over here. I should say achas balayla, achas bayan, because you start at night. Yeah. Maybe the pshat is that Mepharshim say this, that maybe we're not counting the first one. We're counting shalosh shudas. Skip the first one. And then you have 14 plus shalosh shudas. Yeah, there's always going to be a shalosh shudas in the middle of sukkahs. So you have 2 meals a day. One by day. That's where we're starting with, because the night one was an obligation. That's what we're going to see. And then you have 1 by night plus the shalosh shudas. So because the sukkahs is going to end by day. So it's going to be only 13. If you add the shalosh shudas, you'll get 14. But Chacham say there's no limit. If a person wants to fast, he can fast on sukkahs. He doesn't have to have a meal in the sukkah. If he's going to eat, then he has to eat in the sukkah. But if he's not going to eat, then he's fine. He doesn't have to have 14 meals like with the checklist. They said check down of the 14. Except for the first night. There's an obligation on the first night of Sukkot to have a meal in the Sukkah. We're going to see. We'll see where that comes from. What's the source for that? Rabbi Eliezer also said, Mishla Yachal, Leile Yom Tov Rishon, Yashlem Leile Yom Tov Achron Shel Chag. You can make it up. You can make it up on the last night. If you missed the first night, you can make it up on the last night. Yeah, the Rashash I see takes out the word Leila. And it would read like this: Mishla Yachal Yom Tov Rishon, Yashlem Leile Yom Tov Achron Shel Chag. If you missed on the first Yom Tov, not the first night specifically, if you missed on the first Yom Tov, then you can make it up on the last night. What's the last night? The last night would be Shmini Atzeres. It's a problem. Shmini Atzeres, we eat in the Sukkah. We do. But we're in Chaslar, it's different. They're not supposed to eat in the Sukkah Shmini Atzeres. Yeah, it's a problem of Baltaisa. No, it's Israel. These are things that can't be made up. This is a mistake that cannot be fixed. It's something that's lacking that can't be counted. And basically, you lost your chance. If you didn't eat the meal on the first part of Yom Tov, you can't have it at the end. It doesn't help to have it at the end. Now, there's a problem over here because the Chachamim say you don't have to have meals. But according to the Chachamim, it must be only talking about the first meal itself, the very, very first meal. they're saying, according to Rabbi Eliezer, you can make up that meal at the end, and according to Reb Tzadok, you can't make up the first meal at the end. Okay, we're holding out the Gemara on Daf Yomi. That's 27a. My time of the Rebbe Lezer, what's the reason for Rebbe Lezer that says that you have to have 14 meals in the sukkah? Teishvu can't do. It says that you should dwell in the sukkah. The Gemara learns similar to the way that you dwell in. You should sit in the sukkah similar to the way that you dwell in the house. Ma'adir, just like in the house, person has 2 meals a day, once in the morning and once in the evening. Also, in the sukkah, you have to dwell the way you would normally dwell, which is in the morning and the evening you have a meal. For Rabbanan, the Rabbanan say Kedira, that it's like you dwell. They both say the same thing. The only thing is, they say you don't have to eat when you're at home. So therefore in the sukkah as well, you don't have to eat. What's the machlekes over here? Do I have to have every single day of sukkah a meal in the sukkah? Rabbi Lezer says yes, the Chum say no. And both of them learn it the same way. So you have to live in the sukkah the way you live at home. If you don't have to eat, then everyone agrees that if you're going to eat, you have to eat in the sukkah. Question is if you have to go and eat. Let's say you're not hungry, you're not interested. You're detox or something. You don't want to eat. So the Rabbi Lezer says, sorry, it's the wrong time for that. And the Chacham say, no, it's fine. So if the Chacham say you don't have to eat, why do you have to eat on the first night? Why they say that's what they said in the Mishnah, that the first night of Sukkot you have to have a meal in the Sukkah. See the Reb Shimon ben Yochai. Yeah, a lot of times it's Mishum Reb Shimon ben Yochai. Okay. Nemar kan chamisha asa. V'nemar chamisha asa b'chag hamatzos. Over here it says the 15th. The Sukkot begins on the 15th. And it also says, by Pesach it says the 15th. Chamisha asa. Mala alam laila rishon chayba, v'kan be'elach b'shus. Avkan laila rishon chayba, v'kan be'elach b'shus. Also, let me explain. The pasuk says 7 days you should eat matzahs, and then there's another pasuk that says 6 days you should eat matzahs. What's going on? 6 days or 7 days? So it's coming to tell you that the 7th day is not an obligation to eat matzah. We're talking about Pesach. 7th day is not an obligation to eat matzah. It's just that if you want to eat bread, the bread has to be unleavened. But you don't have to eat it. The Gemara says that kol davar shayeh b'chlal, the yatzim and aklal, le'lamed alatzmi yatzah, le'lamed kol kol yatzah. The 7th day was part of the obligation to eat matzah, but then it leaves the regular obligation to eat matzah, and it says that it's only a voluntary. You don't have to eat matzah. You're able to eat matzah. It's rishus. If you're going to eat, it has to be matzah, but you don't have to eat. So it's legal lamed al atzmiyat. It's not coming to teach us that the 7th day is obligated matzah. Lamed al kalkuli, it's coming to tell me that all 6 days is not an obligation to eat matzah. That's the rule that we learned from Rabbi Shmuel. This is one of the examples of that rule. Called davar shayeh b'chlal. It used to be part of the obligation, but yatzim and aklal, it's coming to teach about the whole rule that you don't have to eat matzah the whole Pesach. Yeah, some people may be extra careful with this. Where's the biggest concern of chametz on Pesach? There's not in your wine, or in your meat, and your chicken, and your oil. It's in the matzah. So they say they have matzah just for when it's the real obligation. When it's the real obligation. So if we just told me that you don't have to eat matzah on the 7th day, and based on that you don't have to eat matzah on all 6 days. So when is the obligation? So it says there's another pasuk that says be'erev techel matzah. In the evening you have to have matzah. So the first night, the Seder night, is an obligation to have matzah. The rest of Pesach not. Now, if that's the case, so it says chamisha asar by Pesach. It says chamisha asar by Sukkot. Just like by Pesach there's an obligation to eat the matzah, so too on Sukkot there's an obligation to eat in the sukkah, a meal in the sukkah. Yeah. So machlekes rishonim, what the obligation is. Is the obligation to eat or is the obligation to dwell? If the obligation is to eat, then you would have to have a kazayas on the first night in the sukkah, because matzah is to eat. Matzah is a kazayas. A kazayas of not matzah in the sukkah, but a kazayas of challah in the sukkah. Yeah, matzah is only once a year, but it would be a kazayas in the sukkah. If the obligation is to dwell, then it would need to be a kebeya, because that's the size of the meal. And the obligation may be also that you have to sleep. Yeah, there are 12 quotes. So let's say that the first night, obligation to sleep. Yeah, so in Chabad, we don't have that discussion, the sleeping part. But what would be someone that, let's go back. The first night of Sukkot, even if it rains, we eat in the Sukkah. Okay? Everyone eats in the Sukkah even if it rains. They wait for it to stop. It's an obligation to eat in the Sukkah. Yeah. What about sleeping? You have to wait for the rain to stop before you go to sleep. That could be dependent on this. If you extend the machlokes, if you explain that the machlokes is that the mitzvah of sukkah is learned from the mitzvah of matzah and Pesach, then it would flow over. But if you learn it's just the mitzvah of achila, then you're supposed to have a kazayas, and there's no mitzvah to sleep in the sukkah on the first night. If it's raining, then you're potter, you go to bed. You don't have to wait up for it to stop, so you could be able to fulfill what you have to do with the meal. You have to wait for it to stop. Okay. Rabbi Eliezer also said. What did he also say? He says that someone that didn't eat on the first on Yom Tov, he can make it up at the end of Yom Tov, after. The problem is, Rabbi Eliezer said that you have to eat 14 meals on the sukkah. To make it up after sukkahs would mean that you eat it inside the house. How does that make up eating the 14 meals on the sukkah? It's not going to work. It's like someone that missed the Yalav Mincha and Rosh Chodesh. So he wasn't yet to it. So on Ma'ariv, he said Shemon Esrei, an extra Shemon Esrei. What does he say in the extra Shemon Esrei? Without Yalav Yalav. So because it's not Rosh Chodesh anymore. So I mean, this is a Tosfos that discusses that. But basically, you're making up something that without fixing it. You're just doing it again, and there's no eating another meal in the house. How does that fix the missing sukkah meal? So Amar Bira, Amar Rabami, Rabbi Eliezer retracted. Yeah, the whole Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer was chayzer. He actually holds that you don't need 14 meals in the sukkah. So what's he talking about? That you have to make it up. He's talking about making up the first meal, which the Chachamim agreed to. That there's a one obligation meal, and that's the first meal of Sukkot, the first night. Rabbi Eliezer says you can make up that meal, and the Chachamim say you can't make it up. So originally we had two machlokes. Rabbi Eliezer says 14 meals, the Chachamim say one. And can you make up the first one? The Chachamim say no, and Rabbi Eliezer says yes. Mashlim b'mai. How do you make up the meal? If you say you have bread, I'm not making up a meal. I'm eating that day's meal. Every day I have bread. So what are you telling me? Oh, you ate bread. Oh, okay, very good. That's for the first day of Sukkot. No, that was my dinner. Elamai yashlim tagima. You add in other types of food, which is fruits, like pastries of some sort. What are kaflutes? Is that mushrooms? Kaflutes, Rashi says. Yeah, so some other types of little dishes. Okay, so that's how you would make it up, because that wouldn't be your regular meal. That would be something extra. And that shows that you're having something extra to replace the missed meal. Tanya Namiyahu was also done in a Bryson. That if you make it up with meaning tagima, you fulfill the obligation. This is these pastries or other types of dishes. Okay, Agrippas Amelech, I think was a descendant of Herod. Yeah, it was like an Idumean convert. Now, his apotropos is someone, caretaker of some sort. So he asked, probably was a Jewish person, he asked Rabbi Eliezer, can I just have one meal? I'm not sure if he's asking as a tashlumin. Or is he going on Rabbi Eliezer first opinion that you have to have 14 meals? It sounds like it's the tashlumin. Every day you have all these delicacies. You can't have one extra dish for the mitzvah to honor your maker. Yeah, it's a sharp comment. He has another question. He says, someone like me, I have two wives. One lives in Tiberia, one lives in Tzipori. Yeah, I guess that was the way of keeping them from fighting. So basically, they also built two sukkahs. Achas Petreya, Achas Tzipori. Two different cities. So, can I go from one sukkah to another sukkah? I'll probably spend the first days here, the second days there. Amalai says no, you can't do that. I say that if you leave the sukkah, you're neglecting the first one, and you invalidate the first one. Why? Rabbi Eliezer holds that the sukkah needs to be a sukkah for 7 days. That means you go in it and you're there for 7 days. If you have plans to go to another sukkah within the 7 days, then the first sukkah is not kosher. Tanya Rabbi Eliezer Reimer, Rabbi Eliezer is the Bryson. Rabbi Eliezer says, "Ein yotzin misukah l'sukkah." You can't go from one sukkah to another. Ein yotzin sukkah b'chol shamayit. You also can't make a sukkah on Chol Hamoed. Yeah, it sort of fits together. You can't go from one sukkah to another. You also can't go on a Chol Hamoed trip and set up a sukkah, because you have to have one sukkah, the whole sukkahs. Chachamim say that's not so. You're allowed to go one sukkah to another. They also hold by some sukkah that you can also make a sukkah on Chol Hamoed. The Shavin, but they both agree, even Rabbi Eliezer, that if it fell down, that you can rebuild it. Okay, the Gemara is going to explain what the chiddush is in that. But first, my time with Rabbi Eliezer, what's the reason why Rabbi Eliezer is so strict that you have one sukkah and that's it? It says the pasuk says that you should have a sukkah for 7 days, which means I say sukkah regular shiva, make it one sukkah for 7 days, and don't mess with that. Your sukkah is for 7 days, and that's it. Rabbanan, what do the Rabbanan do? It seems to be clear. The pasuk says you have to have a sukkah for 7 days. I say sukkah b'chag. Exactly the opposite. That you can make a sukkah on Chol Hamoed. Chag sukkah stasa, you can make a sukkah Shivas Yamim all 7 days. Exactly the opposite. Okay, now the Gemara says V'shavin. They both agree that if it fell, you can rebuild it. The Gemara says Pshita. That's obvious. It's still the same sukkah. The Gemara says, well, say maybe that's a new sukkah. It's not the same sukkah. And therefore it's not for 7 days. Kamash Malan, it comes to teach us that it is really the same sukkah. Jimmy, do you remember when the sukkah fell in Bell Harbor? Remember that was a big sukkah. It fell in the middle of, they were setting up the Kiddush.
We remember over here. We remember.
Oh, yeah? Were you there actually?
We heard about it.
It was on the front page of the Miami Herald or something. The sukkah collapsed. Yeah. There was someone setting up. One guy got hurt. Mr. Flyer. Remember Mr. Flyer? He got hit by a piece of spat. The sukkah collapsed. They built it afterwards. They got a construction company to come. Yeah. First it was built like Bachram built it, so it's like just obviously that wasn't good enough. So they got this construction company to put these, anchors into the cement, and they had to build it stronger. Okay, so what the Gemara here is saying is that when you rebuild it, even according to Rebbe Lezer, it's considered the original sukkah. It's not considered that you have a new sukkah, you have to have one sukkah for all 7 days. No, Rebbe Lezer would say that that's the same sukkah. Yeah, I remember Jerry Levine. He was joking about that when the sukkah collapsed. He said Mr. Flyer was inside. He said, Mr. Flyer comments, "How did I get on the roof?" Yeah. Okay. Tanya. Rabbi Lezer Eimer, same saying Adam Yotze Yidei Chevase the end of recent
We had a comment. We were just having trouble with the mute button here.
Oh.
Okay, there was a hurricane and it blew a lot of sukkahs away during Chol Hamoed. Do you remember that? And all of the electricity was out during Chol Hamoed also.
Yeah.
Did people rebuild their sukkahs during that time? I don't remember. I mean, they just tossed the sukkahs out there in the next block. The wind was so strong.
Right. So we hold that you're allowed to build a sukkah until made anyway. But according to Rabbi Eliezer, that he holds that you have to have one sukkah and you have to stick with it. You can't basically, according to Rabbi Eliezer, you can't go to a neighbor's house either to eat from sukkah. You have to eat in your sukkah. You build your sukkah and you stay there.
And if it blew away, if it blew away,
he agrees that you can rebuild it. And it's considered the original one.
Okay, good. That's good news.
Let me just give Rabbi Eliezer a pop-up sukkah. He'll be much more happy. He'll change his mind.
Yeah, I would assume that he wants more of a permanent sukkah, even though before he wasn't in the list. Now we had a list over here. No, I'm sorry, he is in the list. Rabbi Lezer holds the sukkah needs to be permanent. Where does he get that from? Rabbi Lezer said if you make a sukkah like a hut, you lean it against the wall, it's puzzle because it doesn't have a roof. Abai used that as a proof that a sukkah needs to be permanent.
Professor wants to know what list you're referring to.
There was a list on the Zion base on 7b. Your Abai lists eight sages that hold that a sukkah needs to be permanent, versus our opinion that says a sukkah could be temporary. Yeah, and 8b, Amar Abaya, Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Gamliel, Bishami, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi and Kula Svirla, Sukkah Diras Kavabia. They all hold that a sukkah needs to be permanent. Rabbi Lezer is amongst them. Yeah, which fits with this concept that he wants your sukkah there for 7 days. But even it doesn't have to fit with it, because even if the sukkah is temporary, it still has to be 7 days. He would say that it fits with everyone else as well. Okay. Tanya. Just like you can't use a borrowed lulav on the first day of Sukkot. How do you do it on the first day of Sukkot if you don't have a lulav? You have to get it as a gift. And then the person doesn't really want to give you a gift, so he gives you a gift on condition that you give it back. It's called matana manasla. But it says you should take for you on the first day the pre-Eitz Hadar, the fruit of the tree, however Hadar is, we'll see in a week. What's the pshat in Hadar? Kapis Tamarim is the palm branch, and it says lachem, misha lachem, it has to be yours. You'll also not yotze with someone else's sukkah But you can't be invited to your friend's house for Sukkot. You have to own it. Not just the first day of Sukkot. It's all 7 days. You have to own the Sukkot. I agree with you about the lulav on the first day of Sukkot that you have to own it. But you are yaitze with your friend Sukkah. All Ezrach, all dwellers of Israel dwell in a sukkah. That means they can all be in one sukkah. Yeah. Rashi mentions that, well, maybe they're all partners. That's not a proof that it's someone else's sukkah. Maybe everyone contributes. He says it's impossible that everyone would have a Shava Pruta. I don't know if he means that everyone would have to be someone there that didn't actually have a pruta to contribute, a small card. Maybe that's what he means. Whatever the case is, Ru'im Kol Yisrael, everyone is able to go into one sukkah, which means that they're going into their friend's sukkah, or to a borrowed sukkah, or to a public sukkah. According to Rebbe Lezer, that wouldn't be acceptable. Rabbanan, what about the Rabbanan? It said that it should be yours. So Chag Sukkos should be yours. Should be yours. Rabbanan hold that it doesn't need to be yours. So they say no. Can't be stolen. Okay. But if it's a borrowed sukkah, that's acceptable. Rabbi Lezer, what does Rabbi Lezer do with Kol Ezra? That everyone can be in the same sukkah. It says, a very interesting discussion. According to Rebbe Lezer, let's say someone converts on Kol Hamoed. Apparently, you can convert on Kol Hamoed. Let's say a child becomes bar mitzvah on Kol Hamoed. So he's supposed to have a sukkah for 7 days. He doesn't. He has a sukkah for 3 days. So we're saying that Kol Ezra is telling me that that's considered a kosher sukkah. Yeah. It just comes to include someone that wasn't obligated before him.
What's this far Kol Ezra is implying that all Yidden could sit in one sukkah? It seems to be obvious that it's telling that everybody should make their own sukkah. Kol Ezra yeshu b'sukkos and sukkos. Just saying, isn't the simple taich? Everybody should dwell in their own sukkahs. It's a sukkahs lashon rabim.
Right.
I had the same question. Thank you, Yosef, for asking it.
I don't know. I don't know. I hear what you're asking. Let me know if you find an answer. Yeah. It would say, if it would say Kol Ezra B'Yisrael Yeshu B'Sukkah, then that would be much clearer. Yeah. Okay. Now the Rabbanan, Kivan Da'amri, I say Sukkah B'Chol Shamayim L'Yitzchak. The Rabbanan that say that you don't need to own your sukkah, that you can go to a friend's sukkah and all of that. How do they know that a ger that converts in middle of sukkahs can build a sukkah? And how do they know that a katan that matured, became bar mitzvah in middle of sukkahs, that he can build a sukkah? He says, well, they never have a problem because according to them, he can build a sukkah and Chol Hamoed anyway. Tanur Rabbanan. Yeah.
If you're extrapolating from a permanent dwelling, just like a permanent dwelling, a lot of people don't own the home they live in. It's the same thing about a sukkah. You don't have to own the home that you're living in. I don't know if that helps answer the question.
Yeah. The problem is that it's not really extrapolating from a permanent dwelling. It's learning from the pasuk of lachem or lacha, tasa lacha. Lacha means you actually have to own it. Yeah, it doesn't say this by tefillin or something, or else we would have a problem putting tefillin on people. It's, what are you doing, son? It says by tzitzis. It says by tzitzis. If you borrow someone's talis, so there's an assumption that he's giving it to you to fulfill the mitzvah. So he's giving it to you as a gift. Yeah. By the lulav, we actually say it. It's matanom na'aseh. I'm not sure if the tzitzis you have to actually say it or not, but it's the same concept. That because the tzitzis needs to be yours. A borrowed talis is actually exempt from tzitzis. Okay, Taner Rabbanan Ma'aser Rabbi Lai. I believe it's Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Lai, the father of Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Lai. Right? Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Lai was a student of Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara tells us that he learned by his father. He learned by Rabbi Lai. He also learned by Rabbi Akiva, but he also learned by his father. Ma'aser Rabbi Lai shalach lahakol pnei Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Balud. He went to visit his teacher Rabbi Lezer that lived in Lud. Regal on the holiday. Amar Lai, he's getting into trouble. You don't rest on the holiday. You're not one of the resters on the holiday. I really appreciate the lazy people that stay home on the holiday. It says you should rejoice, you and your household. Is that really so? But a person's supposed to be the greatest teacher on the holiday. By the Shunammite woman, when the son was he passed away, so she puts him on the bed of the Elisha, and she runs to Elisha. She takes the animal, and the husband says, "Where are you going? It's not Shabbos." Aha, obviously, on Chodesh and Shabbos, you are obligated. In other words, on the holidays, you are supposed to see the teacher. That means you're not staying home. It's better if you can get back during the day. If you live close to the teacher, then you can go to visit him. If you live far away, you're not going to get back by day, then you're not supposed to go according to Rabbi Lezer. Okay, let's leave it over here.
Thank you.
Did we just hear the invitation to come to see you on Sukka?